Well, with the fighting between Israel and Iran coming to a sort of a halt at this point, attention is shifting back to the ongoing war in Gaza. Health authorities there say at least 21 Palestinians were killed by Israeli fire today. Authorities say strikes hit encampments in Gaza City and in Khan Yunis. Several people were also reportedly killed while waiting for aid in central Gaza. Now, these represent the very latest in a series of deaths at distribution points. Well, in the meantime, Donald Trump says great progress is being made in ceasefire negotiations, but Hamas says talks with Israel remain stalled. So let's dig deeper into the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And for more on that, we're joined by Rosalia Bollen. She's a communications specialist with UNICEF. Rosalia, you have worked extensively in Gaza. Today, we're reaching you in Italy, where you're continuously in touch with your colleagues on the ground. What are they telling you about what the situation is like in Gaza right now?
Well, for starters, I'd really like to thank CBC for featuring Gaza on the program tonight. As you pointed out, all the eyes are on Israel-Iran, but in Gaza, every humanitarian will tell you that the situation is at its worst compared to the entire war. We're really hitting rock bottom. My colleagues on a daily basis run into very severely malnourished children. They run into children who've been injured during food distributions at food distribution sites. They interview parents who actually have children who are all ill. They all have diarrhea because there's no clean water, and so children and adults alike are actually all ill. So the situation today is extremely grave. It's almost as if we've entered a new phase of this conflict, not just because of the incessant bombardments and the killing and the injuries that we see on a daily basis, but also because of really the lack of food. Everyone in Gaza today is hungry, is thirsty, is exhausted. Parents are really beyond despair. They're willing to do anything to find food for their children. We spoke to a mother recently. She hadn't had proper food for her kids in weeks. She's a single mom, and that day, all that she could find amid the rubble and the garbage was some bread that was molded, and she decided to boil water as we spoke to her to make tea, and she was dipping the bread in that and feeding that to her children. That's where we're at today. There's these reports of over 50,000 children injured and killed. It's massive. That's not a number. Those are babies, toddlers, teens, and those are just the children who have been affected by the war. Those are children with war-inflicted injuries.
Forgive me for jumping in, Rosalia. I'm so sorry for interrupting you. I just want to, because you're painting an incredibly powerful, heartbreaking, vivid picture, and I appreciate you giving us that. But there's something you said at the beginning that really jumped out at me, that this is the worst you've seen it since the war began, and that the team there and the situation in Gaza has hit a rock bottom. Has it hit a rock bottom because we've just been going in a downward spiral the whole time? Or was it the fact that Israel and Iran have been engaged in this war and everybody's attention went over there? So it allowed for a vacuum where things got worse. I just want to get your analysis on that for a moment.
It's really the continuous, steady deterioration, and it shouldn't come as a surprise. For the past 20 months, really only a trickle of aid and supplies has entered Gaza on a drip feed, with the exception of February 2025, of the ceasefire that we had this year. But throughout the war, what has entered Gaza was barely sufficient to keep people alive. And so obviously, we shouldn't be surprised that we see children dying of hunger. We shouldn't be surprised that we see children dying of injuries, that we see children dying of leukemia, of all sorts of honestly preventable causes. We're seeing, on top of the children killed in the bombardments, we right now see preventable deaths. From April till May, there's been a 50% increase in the number of children who are acutely malnourished. UNICEF has these malnutrition treatment points throughout Gaza. At the moment, we're operating 126 points throughout Gaza, and we carry out on a daily basis, day in, day out, malnutrition screening. So based on the data that we receive from those centers, we see a very serious aggravation of the situation right under our noses. We meet with children directly in hospitals, and we see children who are just skin and bones. There's nothing left of the child. They're laying
let
on
me
these
ask
hospital
you about
beds.
one other thing. Forgive me. I just don't want us to run out of time. I do want to get your best analysis on something else that's been very troubling, information that's been coming into newsrooms right across the world, which is people allegedly being killed at aid distribution sites. Now, the consistent reporting, and again, foreign journalists cannot get into Gaza. But what we are hearing is that this U.S. and Israeli-backed organization called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, they're distributing aid. And consistently, we're seeing reports, including most recently from Save the Children, another aid organization, that people are being shot at these facilities or at the distribution points. And this is incredibly troubling. So I'm wondering, based on your own experience there or what your colleagues are seeing on the ground, what's your best understanding of what's happening at the aid distribution sites?
Yeah, no, these reports are gut-wrenching indeed. You know, we're talking about a population beyond despair. Nobody should have to risk their lives to get a little bit of food. And yet, that is what is happening day in, day out. We can confirm those reports. As a matter of fact, my colleague James, just the other week, he interviewed a 13-year-old boy. His name is Abed. And Abed was shot in the vicinity of one of those food distribution sites of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Those are Israeli forces shooting at the crowd as to control the crowd. And just a couple of days after we interviewed this boy, he sadly passed away because the medical care that he needs is currently unavailable inside Gaza. The guest house where I stay in is in Rafah al-Mawasi. So I'm currently outside of Gaza, but my international colleagues who are there tell me that almost every day they wake up around 4:30 a.m. local time in Gaza because of the gunshots they hear, gunshots of automatic weapons, machine guns, because of the screams that they can hear, because our guest house is in the close vicinity of one of these sites where the food is being distributed by this organization.
Why, Rosalia, with all of your contacts there and all of your knowledge, why are people being shot at aid distribution sites?
You know, I can't answer that question. It really shouldn't happen, and it really doesn't have to be this way. As we saw during the ceasefire, sufficient aid came in, and there's no need for this to happen. The way that these food supplies are being distributed goes against every humanitarian principle. It's unsafe. It has been killing hundreds of people reportedly, and reportedly over 3,600 people have been injured, many of whom my colleagues actually have met in the hospitals. It's unfair too, because what is happening is that they have a limited quantity of food that they put out there, and they tell people, okay, you come and get it. It's the law of the strongest that is going to prevail. If you're a young man, you stand a good chance at getting something. You're strong enough to fight with others. What if you're pregnant? What if you're sick? What if you're 60 plus? What if you're a child? How are you supposed to get something? It's unsafe, it's unfair, and it's ineffective. It's not addressing the hunger. It's quantities that are largely insufficient, but also they have 4 distribution points in the south of Gaza. UNICEF alone has hundreds of sites where we operate. We have 70 temporary learning spaces that are currently active. We have 126 malnutrition treatment points. We have water distribution points. We have hundreds of points based in the community so that people don't have to walk. We come to them. They can easily access aid in a safe and dignified way. doesn't have to be this way. That is also what is really frustrating to UNICEF and to other humanitarian organizations. Nobody should have to choose between dying of hunger or risk being shot at when you try to get some food.
Rosalia Bollen with UNICEF, I thank you very much for your time. This is an incredibly disturbing picture you're painting for us. And again, I wish we could get people on the ground in Gaza to look into this.
You should see for yourself.
We would love to.
You shouldn't have to rely just on the testimonies from humanitarians. Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.